Welcome back, everybody, to the Deep Dive. We're diving into a text called The Plates of Brass. It's presented as a divinely inspired translation of an ancient record. Now, I know you're probably already familiar with the Bible,
right?
But this text offers a different perspective on stories and figures you probably already know.
It does.
With some really intriguing connections to Kabbalah and even the Book of Mormon.
Exactly.
So get ready for some surprising insights as we unpack the history, the message, and the mystical elements of this unique work.
Well, you know what's fascinating about this text is the origin story that it presents.
Okay.
It's presented as being part of that famous coat of many colors.
Okay.
That was given to Joseph by his father Jacob and written on brass plates in ancient Egyptian.
It creates this really intriguing link between the biblical narrative and the Book of Mormon, which refers to a stick of Joseph, destined to unite with the stick of Judah, representing the Bible. The plates of brass are believed to be part of that stick of Joseph, implying this deep connection between these two scriptural traditions.
Okay, so we've got this ancient text, potentially dating back to the time of Joseph of Egypt. And it's offering a new perspective on stories that we think we know.
Yes.
Plus, we got Kabbalah in the mix. That's a lot to unpack. Where do we even start?
Well, the text itself starts with the creation story, much like the book of Genesis.
Okay.
But it's told from a very different angle.
Oh, really?
God's perspective.
God's perspective?
Yeah.
What does that even sound like?
It uses phrases like, I said, and it was so, emphasizing God's direct and active role in creation.
Wow.
But what makes it even more fascinating is the use of specific Hebrew names for God.
Okay. Like Ahia, Asher Ahia, and Elohim.
Now, I'm guessing those names have some deeper significance.
Absolutely, they do.
Okay.
In Kabbalah, these names represent different aspects of God's nature and his relationship with creation.
Okay.
Ahia, Asher Ahia, often translated as I am that I am, points to God's eternal, unchanging essence, while Elohim is associated with God's creative power.
Okay.
The plates of brass seems to be deliberately using these names to emphasize specific theological points.
So it's like each name kind of unlocks a deeper understanding of God's role in the creation story.
Exactly.
I'm starting to see how Kabbalah adds a whole new dimension to this narrative that we thought we already knew.
Yes, and it doesn't stop there.
Okay.
The plates of brass also introduces this concept of degrees in creation, implying it's a multi-stage process.
Interesting.
A gradual unfolding of the universe rather than a single instantaneous act.
That's interesting. Does this degrees idea connect to Kabbalah at all as well?
It does. In Kabbalah, there's this concept of emanations.
Right.
The idea that God's creative energy flows down through a series of levels or sephiro, gradually bringing the universe into being.
Interesting.
So the plates of brass seems to be drawing on this mystical understanding of creation.
This is already blowing my mind.
Yeah.
It's like looking at the creation story through a whole new lens. What happens next in this alternative telling?
Well, next up we have the story of Adam and Eve.
Okay.
But even here, the plates of brass takes a different approach.
Okay.
Particularly when it comes to the role of Satan. It introduces this Hebrew concept of Yashad, which means unity.
Okay, unity.
Yeah.
How does that tie into the story of Adam and Eve?
Well, the text suggests that Satan, disguised as the serpent, was trying to disrupt the Yachad, the inherent unity between humanity and God.
Wow.
His temptation wasn't simply about disobeying a rule, but about severing that primal connection.
That adds a whole new layer to the traditional interpretation.
It does. Yeah.
It's not just about eating forbidden fruit.
Right.
It's about a disruption of this fundamental unity.
Exactly.
Wow.
And this theme of separation and its consequences is a major thread that runs throughout the plates of brass, just like it does in the Book of Mormon.
So we're seeing these recurring themes emerge.
Yes.
This concept of degrees, the disruption of unity, this idea of consequences. It's like the plates of brass is setting the stage for a deeper exploration of these concepts as the narrative unfolds.
Precisely.
Wow.
And it continues with the story of Cain and Abel, but with an intriguing twist.
Okay.
The plates of brass suggest that Cain's actions weren't driven solely by jealousy, but were part of a larger pattern of wickedness.
Okay.
what it calls secret combinations.
Secret combinations. That sounds ominous.
It is.
Yeah.
And this idea resonates with teachings found in the Book of Mormon, which warns about the dangers of secret societies and their corrupting influence.
You know, that's a theme that's still relevant today.
Oh, absolutely.
With all the talk about conspiracies and hidden agendas, it's fascinating how these ancient texts address issues that still resonate with us today. But let's not get sidetracked.
Okay.
Where does the plates of brass take us next?
Well, from the tragedy of Cain and Abel, it moves to an even greater catastrophe, the flood.
The flood.
But even in this familiar story, the plates of brass offers a unique perspective.
Okay, I'm all ears.
Okay.
What's so different about this version of the flood?
It emphasizes God's mercy, even amidst destruction.
Okay.
The Hebrew word for water, mayim, is used throughout this section.
Okay.
And in Kabbalah, mayim is often associated with God's compassion and loving kindness.
So the floodwaters, which are usually seen as a symbol of punishment, are being portrayed as an act of mercy.
It is an interesting interpretation.
That's very interesting.
Isn't it? The plates of brass seems to be suggesting that the flood was a necessary cleansing.
Okay.
A way to wipe the slate clean and give humanity a fresh start.
Interesting.
It also draws attention to the ark itself, describing it as a box or chest, which in Cabalistic thought can symbolize spiritual preservation.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
The ark protected those who were righteous,
right,
offering them a safe haven amidst the chaos.
Exactly.
And this theme of preservation ties into the idea of covenants, right?
Exactly. The plates of brass talks about the everlasting covenant.
Okay.
God's enduring promise to protect and guide his people. This concept of covenants is also central to the Book of Mormon, emphasizing the importance of staying faithful to God and his teachings.
So we're seeing these connections to the Book of Mormon pop up again and again.
We are.
The idea of secret combinations, the emphasis on covenants, and now this unique interpretation of the flood. It's like these two texts are illuminating each other, offering deeper insights into these ancient stories.
That's a great way to put it. And the connections continue as the plates of brass introduces us to the story of Nimrod and the Tower of Babel.
Ah, yes. The classic tale of human ambition and overreaching.
That's right.
What's the plates of brass's take on this story?
Well, it portrays Nimrod as this really ambitious figure who tries to build a tower to reach heaven. Almost like he's challenging God's authority. And that ambition, coupled with pride, is what leads to humanity's downfall.
So it's not just about building a really tall tower.
No.
It's about the motivations behind it.
Right.
The desire to kind of usurp God's power and make a name for oneself.
Exactly. And the consequences are pretty stark. The scattering of people, the confusion of languages, it all stems from that initial act of pride and rebellion.
Wow.
It's a cautionary tale about the dangers of turning away from God, seeking worldly glory instead of spiritual growth.
You know, it's interesting because that same theme of civilizations rising and falling based on their righteousness is a major theme in the Book of Mormon as well.
Absolutely.
It's like both texts are warning us about the same pitfalls.
They are, and this shared warning makes the connection between the plates of brass and the Book of Mormon even stronger. They both seem to be urging us to prioritize our relationship with God and to seek his guidance in all things.
Well, speaking of seeking guidance, the plates of brass then takes us on a journey with Abraham and Sarah.
Yes.
Two of the most central figures in biblical history.
That's right.
What's their story like in this telling?
It focuses on their covenant with God and the promises made to them. It introduces these two Hebrew concepts, Sharatha and Roah. Sharatha refers to Abraham's role as a leader who guides others towards God, while Roah points to his prophetic calling.
So we're seeing a more nuanced picture of Abraham here. He's not just a man of faith.
Right.
He's also a leader and a prophet.
That's right.
Divinely appointed to guide his people. It reminds me of how the Book of Mormon also highlights Abraham's role in God's plan.
It does. There's always more to learn and discover. And the plates of brass keeps prompting us to dig deeper. For example, it brings up Abraham's willingness to sacrifice Isaac. A story filled with profound meaning in both the Old Testament and the Book of Mormon.
That story always raises a lot of questions about faith and obedience.
It does.
It suggests that the plates of brass and the Book of Mormon are tapping into some similar spiritual principles and concepts.
They are, and those connections become even more apparent as the plates of brass dives into the story of Jacob and Esau.
Oh, yes.
The twin brothers who were rivals from birth.
Their story is full of drama and intrigue. What does the plates of brass focus on?
It zeroes in on the significance of the birthright blessing and how it was passed down through the lineage. And then there's Jacob's ladder dream, which is portrayed as this powerful vision of divine communication and blessings.
You know, it's amazing how those same themes of family dynamics, blessings, and seeking God's guidance are woven throughout the Book of Mormon as well.
Exactly. Both texts remind us that our choices have consequences not only for ourselves, but for future generations. It's a powerful reminder of our interconnectedness and the ripple effects of our actions.
Speaking of consequences, the story of Joseph in Egypt is a prime example of how even betrayal and hardship can ultimately serve a greater purpose.
It is. The plates of brass emphasizes Joseph's prophetic dreams, his betrayal by his brothers, and his eventual rise to power in Egypt. But it also highlights the themes of forgiveness and reconciliation. It shows us Joseph's compassion and willingness to forgive those who wronged him.
That's a beautiful message.
It is.
Forgiveness isn't just about letting go of anger. It's about choosing to love and extend grace, even when it's difficult.
Exactly.
And that message of forgiveness and redemption is central to the Book of Mormon as well.
Absolutely. Both texts show us that even in the face of adversity, we can choose to overcome bitterness and resentment, just as Joseph did. And in his story, we also see the concept of divine providence at work.
It's like God had a bigger plan for Joseph, even when things looked bleak. His experiences, even the painful ones, were ultimately leading him towards a greater purpose.
That's a comforting thought.
It is.
Yeah.
It reminds us that even when we don't understand what's happening in our lives, God might be working behind the scenes.
That's right.
And this idea of God's guiding hand in our lives is another strong link between the plates of brass and the Book of Mormon. It's like they're both trying to reassure us that we're not alone in our journeys.
Exactly. And this brings us to Moses and Zipporah, where the plates of brass really delves into the significance of the Torah as a divine covenant.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more about how this covenant plays out.
Well, the text goes deep into the symbolism of the burning bush, the Ten Commandments, and how these events were meant for both ancient Israel, A&D, modern-day believers.
It's like the plates of brass is encouraging us to see those stories that we think we know in a fresh light, to uncover some deeper layers of meaning.
Yes, and the text uses Kabbalah to do just that. Remember Mayim, the Hebrew word for water that we discussed earlier? Well, it pops up again in the story of the Exodus, when the Israelites crossed the Red Sea.
That's right, the parting of the Red Sea. That's such a dramatic moment.
It is.
What's the connection to Maine?
The plates of brass seems to be suggesting that the Red Sea crossing like the flood represents a cleansing and a new beginning. It's like those waters of Mayim are washing away the slavery in Egypt and making way for a new chapter.
So it's not just about escaping physical bondage.
No.
It's about a spiritual transformation as well.
Exactly. And this idea of spiritual transformation is central to the Exodus narrative. The Israelites' journey through the wilderness becomes a metaphor for our own spiritual journeys, the challenges we face, the temptations we encounter,
and the need for faith and obedience to reach the promised land.
You know, this reminds me of how Nephi, the prophet in the Book of Mormon, leads his family through the wilderness. He faces trials and doubts just like the Israelites.
That's right.
It's like both texts are showing us that the path to spiritual growth isn't always easy.
It's not.
It's filled with obstacles and detours.
It is. And both the plates of brass and the Book of Mormon emphasize the importance of trusting in God's guidance during those difficult times. It's about surrendering to a higher power, even when we don't understand the plan.
That's a message I think we can all relate to.
I think so.
It's so easy to get caught up in our own anxieties and frustrations. But sometimes we just need to let go and trust that things will work out in the end.
That's a beautiful way to put it. It's about having faith even when we can't see the whole picture.
Now, I'm curious to hear more about how the plates of brass integrates Cabalistic concepts.
We've talked about Mayim and the idea of degrees in creation. What else is there?
Well, the plates of brass gets even more into the mystical side of things by connecting certain biblical figures to specific sephiro, on the tree of life.
Okay, before we go any further, I think we need a quick Kabbalah 101 lesson here.
Okay.
What exactly is the tree of life, and what are these Sephirot?
Great question. In Kabbalah, the tree of life is a diagram that represents the divine attributes and the flow of creative energy throughout the universe. The Sephirot are the 10 spheres or emanations on this tree, each representing a specific quality or aspect of God.
So it's like a map of the divine realm.
That's a good way to think about it.
Okay.
And the plates of brass takes this map and starts placing biblical figures on it, suggesting that each of these individuals embodied particular divine qualities.
That's fascinating.
Each played a specific role in God's plan, expressing unique spiritual qualities.
So it's like the plates of brass is adding this mystical layer to our understanding of these biblical figures.
Yes.
It's not just about their actions and accomplishments. It's about the deeper spiritual energies they embodied.
Exactly, and it doesn't stop there.
Okay.
The plates of brass also delves into the symbolism of the Hebrew alphabet.
Wow.
Each letter is associated with a particular meaning and energy. And the text explains how you can use these letters in meditation and prayer to connect with the divine.
Wow. I've heard about the mystical significance of the Hebrew alphabet, but I never realized it was so intricate.
It is.
Can you give an example?
Of course, take the first letter, Aleph.
Okay.
It represents unity beginnings and the potential for creation.
Okay.
The plates of brass explains that meditating on this letter can help you tap into that creative energy and connect with the source of all things.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
It's like each letter is a key that unlocks a specific aspect of the divine.
Exactly.
It's like the plates of brass is opening up this whole new way to engage with scripture and spiritual practice. It's not just about reading the words.
Right.
But about tapping into the deeper layers of meaning encoded within them.
Exactly. And that's what makes the plates of brass so unique and compelling.
Yeah.
It challenges you to think differently, to see the familiar in new ways, and to explore the hidden depths of your own spiritual traditions.
I'm ready to dive deeper. Okay, so we've seen how the plates of brass weaves together these biblical stories and Book of Mormon concepts and Cabalistic ideas.
Yes.
But I'm sensing there's even more to uncover here.
There is.
What other surprises does this text have in store?
Well, it gets really interesting when the plates of brass tackles the afterlife.
Okay.
And it's not what you might expect.
What's so different about the plates of brass's take on the afterlife?
It doesn't present that traditional heaven and hell scenario. Instead, it describes a realm called Sheol.
Okay.
Essentially, a waiting place where souls continue their spiritual development after death.
Hold on, a waiting place. So it's not about, like, immediate reward or punishment.
No, not in the conventional sense.
Okay.
The plates of brass suggest that Sheol is more about growth and refinement. It's not a final destination, but a transition.
Okay.
A continuation of the soul's journey.
So it's like we don't just suddenly become perfect after we die.
Exactly. The plates of brass suggest that we take our experiences, our knowledge, even our unfinished business with us.
Wow.
Sheol provides the space to process all that.
Okay.
To continue evolving towards a deeper connection with God.
I like that it's a much more hopeful and dynamic view of the afterlife.
It is.
It aligns with the plates of brass's emphasis on teshuvah.
Yes.
The idea that it's never too late to turn back to God.
Right. It's never too late to learn, to grow, and to make amends, even after we've passed from this life.
Wow.
God's love and mercy extend far beyond our earthly existence. This concept of continual progression resonates strongly with Book of Mormon teachings about the spirit world and the opportunities for growth that continue after death.
It's fascinating how the plates of brass weaves together this Cabalistic concept of Sheol with ideas that parallel teachings found in the Book of Mormon.
It is, and it gets even deeper when the plates of brass tackles the nature of good and evil.
Now, that's a topic that's been debated for centuries. What's the plates of brass's perspective?
It doesn't present good and evil as these absolute opposing forces, but locked in a cosmic battle.
Okay.
Instead, it suggests that they exist on a spectrum.
Interesting.
And that every person has the capacity for both.
So it's not a black and white good versus evil scenario.
Right. The plates of brass encourages us to see the complexity of human nature. It's about recognizing that constant struggle within ourselves.
Yeah.
The pull between our higher and lower impulses.
So it's not about labeling ourselves as good or bad.
No.
But about being aware of our choices and their consequences.
Precisely, it's about recognizing that we have the power to choose which direction we move on that spectrum of good and evil.
Okay.
It emphasizes aligning ourselves with those aspects of our being connected to God and to love.
This reminds me of the Book of Mormon's teachings about agency.
Yes.
Our ability to choose between good and evil. It's not about being forced into righteousness.
Right.
It's about making conscious choices that lead us closer to God.
Yes. And the plates of brass provides a beautiful illustration of this concept through its description of the tree of knowledge. Remember, it's not portrayed as some forbidden fruit that brings instant punishment.
It's more nuanced than that.
Exactly. It represents the potential for both spiritual nourishment and separation from God depending on the choices we make.
Okay.
The key takeaway is that we must choose wisely.
So it's not about avoiding knowledge or experience.
Right.
It's about using discernment and making choices that align with our highest selves.
Exactly. And we need to remember that our choices have consequences, not just for us, but for those around us.
It's a powerful reminder that we're all interconnected and our actions ripple outward, impacting the lives of others.
It is, and that's what I find so compelling about the plates of brass. It's not just about abstract theories or mystical concepts. It's about putting those principles into practice. It encourages us to live more consciously, to be mindful of our choices, and to strive to create a more loving and compassionate world.
You know, as we've been exploring these ideas, I've been struck by the sheer depth and richness of the plates of brass.
Absolutely.
It's a text that can be studied and pondered for a lifetime, revealing new insights with each reading.
Absolutely. And I encourage all our listeners to seek out this fascinating text for themselves. See what resonates with you, what challenges your assumptions, and what inspires you to dive deeper into your own spiritual journey.
That's a great point. Exploring the plates of brass is a personal journey, and everyone will find their own unique treasures within its pages.
And remember, as with any spiritual text, the most important thing is not to take everything literally, but to engage with the ideas, to ask questions, and to allow the text to spark your own spiritual insights.
Well said. Thank you for guiding us through this incredible deep dive into the plates of brass.
It's been my pleasure.
I know I'll be pondering these ideas for a long time to come.
And to all you deep divers out there, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the plates of brass Torah of Moses. May your own exploration be filled with wonder, insight, and a renewed sense of purpose.